Have you ever sacrificed your best years for your family, working, saving, and building a home filled with memories, only to realize the people you love most are the ones waiting to strip it all away from you? My name is Jessica. I am 67 years old, and I never thought I would stand before you with a story like this. For over 40 years, I poured myself into my students as a teacher and later as a principal. I believed education was my calling, and shaping young lives was my greatest gift. My late husband, Frank, used to remind me that one day, when I finally stepped away from the classroom, we would enjoy the golden years together. Travel, rest, and laughter. But life has a way of taking turns we don't see coming. Frank left me 3 years ago, his heart too tired to keep up with his generous spirit. Since then, I've lived alone in the house we built together, clinging to his memory and the garden he planted for me. I thought my retirement would be a bittersweet but beautiful moment, a chance to celebrate not only my career but the life Frank and I created. That evening, the community center was filled with joy. Old colleagues, friends, even neighbors gathered to honor me. My name on the banner, autumn flowers on every table, laughter spilling from every corner. I remember feeling proud, thinking, "Jessica, you've made it. You've done your part, and now it's time to rest." But as I walked down the hall toward the restroom, I heard words that stopped my heart. My daughter-in-law's voice, sharp, deliberate, and filled with greed, whispered to my only son, "Slip something in her drink." 6 words. 6 words that turned my world upside down. I stood frozen against the wall, my breath caught in my chest. At first, I thought I misheard. Surely my son and his wife wouldn't plot something so cruel. Surely, family would protect me, not conspire against me. But as I listened, I realized their intentions were clear. They weren't planning a joke or a harmless prank. They were preparing to drug me, make me appear confused, and take everything I had worked for. My home, my savings, my independence. And at that moment, my celebration turned into a battlefield. But before I continue, let me pause here for you. You are not just my audience. You are part of my heart. I know many of you are in your 60s, 70s, even 80s. I know the aches that greet you in the morning, the loneliness that sometimes creeps in when the house is too quiet, and the fear that comes when those you trust begin to look at you differently. So allow me to pray for you right now. May your health remain steady, may your memory stay sharp, may your children rise to honor you, and may your golden years be filled with peace, not betrayal. May you never find yourself in the position I was in, listening to the people you love plot against you. And if by chance you've ever felt discarded, unappreciated, or taken advantage of, know this: you are not alone. My story is one of pain, yes, but also of courage. It is about standing tall when others try to make you fall. Tonight, I will share with you how a retirement party meant to honor me became the night I fought to save my freedom, and how switching a glass of champagne was the decision that changed everything. So, if you haven't already, take a second to subscribe to this channel. Leave a comment below and tell me where you are watching from. I would love to know which part of the world you're joining me from. Because as I share my story, I want to know yours as well. Now, let me take you back to that night. The night I realized my son and his wife were not celebrating me. They were preparing to erase me. I still remember every detail of that evening. The way the air smelled faintly of autumn leaves, the hum of conversation echoing across the community center hall, and the flicker of candles placed carefully on each table. My colleagues had truly gone all out for me. White cloths covered the tables, golden ribbons tied around the chairs, and a banner stretched across the stage. "Congratulations, Principal Jessica." For a moment, I felt cherished. After 43 years of teaching and 15 as principal, this was the send-off I believed I had earned. Former students came to hug me, reminding me of moments I had forgotten. One boy, well, now a grown man with children of his own, thanked me for believing in him when no one else did. Another woman pressed my hand and whispered, "You changed my life." Each word filled me with warmth. I thought Frank would have loved this. My late husband always told me that I underestimated the impact I had on people. Seeing that crowded room proved he was right. Yet, despite the joy and celebration, there was a shadow lingering at the edge of my heart. That shadow came in the form of my son, Bobby, and his wife, Tori. They arrived late. Bobby wore a suit that looked far too expensive for a middle school teacher's salary, and Tori floated in on high heels, every strand of her hair in place, her perfume announcing her arrival before she even stepped into the room. They smiled, of course, but the smile felt stiff, calculated. "Mom, you look lovely," Bobby said, kissing my cheek. His voice lacked warmth. "Jessica, what a crowd you have here." Tori chimed in, her manicured fingers brushing my arm as though she were performing for the cameras that weren't even there. I nodded politely, but inside, I felt the same unease I had felt for years. My relationship with my son had been strained ever since he married Tori. The closeness we once had, the late-night conversations, the laughter while making pancakes in the kitchen, the bond of mother and child, it had faded into something formal, transactional. He called when he needed something, visited when it was convenient, and more often than not, I felt like an afterthought in his life. Still, I convinced myself this night would be different. It was my retirement, after all. Surely, they would put aside whatever distance had grown between us and share in my joy. The night moved forward with speeches and laughter. I raised my glass several times, sipping slowly from the crystal flute adorned with a tiny apple charm, a gift from my teachers, symbolizing my years of service and education. I loved that charm. It reminded me of why I had given my life to teaching. But then came the moment that shattered everything. I had stepped away from the crowd, heading down the narrow hallway toward the restroom. The chatter from the main hall faded as I turned a corner, and that's when I heard voices, low, urgent, unmistakable. At first, I considered walking on, giving them privacy, but something in their tone rooted me to the spot. I pressed my back against the wall, my heart thudding in my chest as I realized it was Bobby and Tori speaking. "It has to be tonight," Tori whispered. "The lawyer said the sooner she shows confusion, the faster we can act." My breath caught. Confusion? Act? Bobby hesitated. "She's my mother, Tori." "I don't know." "She's sitting on a fortune, Bobby. That house, her pension, her savings. Are we going to keep living like this while she wastes it on gardens and books? Sunset Manor will take her in as soon as we show signs she can't live alone. Dr. Hartwell is ready to help push the papers through. All we need is one little slip, and she's finished." I pressed a trembling hand over my mouth. My son. My own child. Talking about me as though I were a burden to be disposed of. Bobby muttered. "But what are you planning to do?" Tori's answer still rings in my ears. "Slip something in her drink. A mild sedative, just enough to make her stumble, forget names, lose track of the moment. Everyone will think she had too much champagne. By Monday, we file the papers, and by next month, she's tucked away. No one will question it." My knees weakened. I leaned harder against the wall, praying they wouldn't hear my ragged breathing. They wanted to drug me, make me appear incompetent, steal my home, strip away my independence. My mind raced. This can't be happening. Not Bobby. Not my boy. I thought of Frank. Of the years we worked to build our house. Of the nights I sat up late, marking papers so I could afford Bobby's college tuition. Of every sacrifice I made so that he could live with comfort and dignity. And here he was, plotting with his wife to throw me away like yesterday's news. A part of me wanted to crumble right there in that hallway, to slide down the wall and weep. But another voice inside me, Frank's voice, rose up. "Jessica, you've spent your life dealing with scheming teenagers. Don't you dare let this woman outsmart you." I steadied myself. My years as an educator had taught me one thing: stay calm, think clearly, and act when the time is right. I slipped back into the main hall, my smile plastered in place though my insides churned. The music played, the crowd laughed, and there on the table sat my champagne glass, its apple charm glinting under the lights. I saw Bobby hovering nearby, glancing in my direction too often, and across the room, Tori leaning close to a neighbor, ready to create her distraction. The trap was set. My heart pounded, but my hands steadied. If they wanted a performance, they would get one. Sure enough, Tori bumped into Mrs. Patterson, spilling red wine all over her cream dress. Gasps erupted, eyes turned, and the distraction was complete. In that very moment, Bobby moved quickly toward my glass, a small vial slipping from his pocket. I didn't hesitate. "Bobby," I called sweetly, lifting my glass as if I had just finished a sip. Would you mind getting me a slice of that chocolate cake? You know how I love it. He froze, eyes wide, caught in the act. For a second, I saw panic flicker across his face. He pocketed the vial quickly, forcing a smile. Of course, Mom, he stammered. As he turned, I reached for Tori's identical champagne glass sitting unattended on the table. In one smooth motion, I switched mine for hers. My glass with the apple charm now sat where she had left hers, and in her haste, she didn't notice the exchange when she returned. Moments later, she raised her glass to her lips, taking a long, steady sip. I felt my stomach twist, not with guilt, but with grim certainty. If she had been so eager to poison me, she would now taste the fruit of her own scheme. The speeches resumed, the toasts rang out, and I stood silently, my glass now untouched in my hand. My colleagues cheered, my neighbors smiled, but my eyes stayed fixed on Tori. At first, she seemed fine. But then a wobble. A blink that lingered too long. A hand gripping Bobby's arm for balance. Are you all right, dear? I asked gently, watching her face pale. She tried to answer, but her words came slow, heavy, as the drug began to take hold. Gasps rose from the crowd. All eyes turned to her now. And in that moment, as Bobby tried to support his staggering wife, I felt both heartbreak and steel harden in my chest. My son had betrayed me, but I had survived the ambush. I was still standing, and they were the ones stumbling. That night, under the banner of my retirement celebration, I learned a bitter truth. Sometimes the deepest cuts don't come from strangers but from the very hands you once held with love. The next morning, I sat alone in my kitchen, staring into a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. The rain tapped steadily against the window, blurring the garden Frank and I had planted together. Normally, that view brought me comfort. But that morning, it felt different, like everything I had built could be ripped away at any second. I kept replaying the words I had heard at my retirement party, Tori's whisper, Bobby's hesitation, the vial in his hand. My body ached with betrayal. It was one thing to know your child had drifted away, quite another to hear him conspiring to drug you, to make you appear weak and unfit. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But mostly I wanted answers. Frank always said I had two strengths, my stubbornness and my ability to think under pressure. I could almost hear his voice in the quiet kitchen. Jessica, don't sit in despair. Find the truth, and then fight. So I opened my laptop. I typed in Dr. Hartwell's name, the physician I had trusted for years, the same one Tori had mentioned. At first, what I found seemed ordinary. Articles about elder care, community health, and aging gracefully. But then I noticed his name on the advisory board of Sunset Manor, the very facility Tori had referenced. I dug deeper, clicking through medical journals and public disclosures. My heart sank. He owned shares in the facility. The very man who had been advising me on my health stood to gain if I was placed under care. That discovery rattled me, but I wasn't finished. Next, I searched Tori. Her resume painted a neat picture of a woman working as a patient advocate in a billing company. But her LinkedIn history told another story. She had once been employed as a marketing coordinator at Sunset Manor. She wasn't just connected to the place, they both were. I sat back in my chair, rubbing my temples. This wasn't a careless scheme born out of greed last night. It was carefully planned. My son and his wife weren't acting alone. They were working within a network. Before I could think further, my phone rang. Bobby's name flashed on the screen. Hi, Mom, he said, his voice dripping with concern. How are you feeling this morning? You seemed a little tired last night. I forced a calm tone. I'm fine. Actually, better than fine. How's Tori? She didn't look well when you left. Oh, yeah, she had a rough night. Probably food poisoning. His voice faltered. You didn't feel sick at all? No, I slept quite well, I replied, letting the silence hang heavy. He rushed to fill it. Well, I was just thinking now that you're retired, maybe it's time to consider what comes next. You know, that big house all by yourself. It must be a lot to handle. There was Plan B, the gentle persuasion, the soft push toward surrendering my independence. I straightened my back. Actually, I've been feeling more energized than ever. I'm thinking about traveling. Maybe even dating again. Silence. Long and sharp. Dating, he finally croaked. Why not? I'm only 67. Frank always said I was too young at heart to grow old alone. There's a gentleman from my book club who's been asking me to dinner. I smiled at the lie, savoring the unease I knew it would bring. Bobby cleared his throat. Mom, I don't think now's the time to make big decisions. Change can be overwhelming at your age. At my age? I repeated, my tone firm. Bobby, I've been making big decisions all my life. Retirement doesn't mean I'm helpless. He backpedaled quickly. That's not what I meant. Look, maybe Tori and I should come over later, help you think through your options. That's kind, but I have lunch with Patricia Morrison today. The pause on his end was telling. Patricia Morrison? The attorney. Yes. I'm updating my estate plans, making sure everything is organized. With retirement, it's best to keep paperwork in order. I could almost hear his heart drop through the line. Oh, that's smart, Mom. Your father taught me well, I said coolly. He always warned me to protect myself, especially when others might try to take advantage. When I hung up, my chest burned with both grief and strength. The boy I once raised with bedtime stories and pancake breakfasts was gone, but the man who replaced him had underestimated me. Later that afternoon, I went to gather my financial documents for Patricia. That's when my stomach dropped. The lock on my filing cabinet looked scratched. Freshly scratched. I opened the drawers and immediately saw the signs. Folders misplaced, papers folded differently, bank statements stacked in odd order. Someone had been inside. My hands trembled as I pulled out my insurance policies and investment portfolio. Tiny indentations told me they had been photocopied. My entire financial life had been examined. House deeds, pension statements, savings accounts, even Frank's old life insurance. They had cataloged my worth like scavengers circling prey. The violation cut deeper than the attempted drugging. They had entered my home. My safe place. My memories. When Patricia arrived for lunch, I could barely hold back the tears. She was in her 70s herself, sharp-eyed and decisive. The moment she saw my face, she set her purse down and leaned close. Jessica, tell me everything. So I did. The whisper at the party. The switch of glasses. The tampered cabinet. Bobby's phone call that morning. I laid it all before her like broken glass on the table. Patricia listened without interruption, only jotting down notes in her precise handwriting. When I finished, she reached for my hand. This isn't just greed, Jessica. This is criminal. What they tried to do last night is elder abuse. What they've already done, going through your papers, could be fraud. And with Dr. Hartwell involved, this may go far beyond your family. I swallowed hard. What do I do? First, we change the locks. Tonight. Second, we document everything. And third, we take this to the police. I know a detective who specializes in elder fraud. Her name is Maria Rodriguez. She doesn't play games. The name sparked a tiny ember of hope in my chest. But Patricia wasn't done. She looked me straight in the eye. Jessica, I have to ask. If we uncover proof that Bobby has already stolen from you, are you prepared to press charges? The question tore at me. Images of Bobby as a child filled my mind. His laughter in the backyard, his tears when we put our old dog to rest, the pride in his eyes when he graduated. Could I really send my own son to prison? But then another image came. The look on his face as he pocketed that vial. The cold calculation in Tori's whisper. Yes, I said firmly. I am prepared. Patricia nodded. Good. Then it's time to fight back. That afternoon, the locks were changed. I felt safer, but I also knew safety was only an illusion until the scheme was exposed. The next day, Patricia introduced me to Detective Maria Rodriguez at the Portland Police Department. She was younger than I expected, with eyes that held no patience for nonsense. After I played her the recording I had captured on my small device, her jaw tightened. This is bigger than one greedy couple, she said. We've been tracking reports of coordinated elder fraud in this area for months. Hearing your story confirms what we've suspected, that medical professionals and family members may be working together. Her words chilled me, but they also gave me resolve. She leaned forward. Jessica, are you willing to help us gather more evidence? We'll protect you, but we need your cooperation to build a case strong enough to take them all down. I didn't hesitate. Yes, whatever it takes. For the first time in days, I felt the weight lift slightly. I wasn't alone anymore. But that night, as I sat by my window looking at Frank's garden, I knew this was only the beginning. My son and his wife thought they could quietly erase me, but they had underestimated a woman who had spent decades outsmarting clever teenagers. Now, they would see what happened when a mother turned her pain into a weapon. And before I continue, let me pause for a moment and ask you, have you ever seen someone in your community, an elder, a neighbor, maybe even a family member, taken advantage of in ways that made your heart ache? If you have, share your thoughts in the comments below. Let us know, because these stories must not stay hidden. Walking out of Detective Rodriguez's office that afternoon, I felt the weight of fear shift into something sharper, resolve. For days, I had carried the sting of betrayal like a heavy cloak. But now I felt a spark. My son and his wife thought they were clever, that I was nothing more than an aging woman ready to be tucked away. They had no idea I was already planning my counterattack. Rodriguez gave me simple instructions. Keep playing along, act vulnerable, let them show their hand. Every word, every suggestion, every attempt to control me would be captured and stored as evidence. My role wasn't to fight openly, but to appear helpless. That part stung, pretending to be weaker than I am. Yet, if that performance brought the truth into the light, then so be it. That evening, I stood in front of the mirror and practiced. I mussed my hair slightly, swapped one earring for another that didn't match, and forced my voice into a tremble. I had spent decades teaching teenagers how to stand tall. Now I was preparing to slouch. It felt wrong. But as Frank used to say, sometimes you beat a fox by pretending to be the chicken. The first test came with a phone call to Bobby. "Sweetheart," I said, letting my words quiver, "I don't know what's happening to me. Yesterday, I found my reading glasses in the refrigerator. And this morning, I nearly forgot the route to the grocery store. I'm scared." He didn't even pause. His tone was thick with feigned sympathy, but underlined by eagerness. "Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry you're going through this. Have you talked to Dr. Hartwell?" "I have an appointment tomorrow," I replied softly. "But Bobby, what if I can't live alone anymore?" "Don't worry, Mom," he said quickly, almost too quickly. "Tori and I will handle everything. You'll be safe with us." Safe. The word curled in my stomach like poison. The next day, I drove to Dr. Hartwell's office. I parked a few blocks away where Rodriguez's team waited in a surveillance van. Under my cardigan, a tiny wire rested snug against my chest. My fingers brushed against it before I walked in, reminding myself, every word counts. Inside, I shuffled my steps, shoulders bent, as though age had finally weighed me down. "Doctor," I began, wringing my hands, "I don't know what's happening. Since my retirement party, I've been so forgetful. I misplace things. I can't focus. Sometimes I feel lost." His eyes lit up, not with kindness, but with calculation. He leaned forward. "Jessica, what you're describing are early signs of cognitive decline. At your age, it's not uncommon. We need to discuss your safety." I looked down, feigning shame. "My safety? Yes. Have you considered assisted living? Sunset Manor has an excellent program. You'd be surrounded by professionals who understand your condition." I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from lashing out. Instead, I let my voice tremble. "But wouldn't I need some kind of evaluation before making such a change?" "Of course," he said smoothly. "I can arrange that. Dr. Patterson, Dr. Kim, or Dr. Willows, any of them would be perfect. They specialize in these assessments. We'll get you scheduled right away." My throat tightened, but I forced gratitude into my words. "Thank you, doctor. You're very kind." Kind. If only he knew I had just recorded every word of his corruption. When I left his office, I didn't drive straight home. I went to Patricia's firm, where she and Detective Rodriguez were waiting. The moment I replayed the recording, Patricia shook her head in disbelief while Rodriguez scribbled notes. "This is exactly what we needed," Rodriguez said firmly. "Hartwell isn't just suggesting assisted living, he's naming specific doctors who work with him. That's collusion. And now we have it on record." Patricia reached for my hand. "Jessica, you've done wonderfully. But there's more we need. We need proof that Bobby and Tori are already mishandling your money. That will make the case airtight. So we laid a trap. With Patricia's guidance, I opened a new checking account with just enough money to tempt them. Then, in a show of trust, I told Bobby I couldn't manage all the paperwork anymore. Would you help me by handling this one small account? I asked, sounding weary. He didn't hesitate. Of course, Mom. You can rely on me. That evening, as I sat at my kitchen table with the new bank documents in front of me, I felt my chest ache. I thought of the boy who once saved his allowance to buy me a Mother's Day gift, the child who cried when his father worked late, the teenager who asked me for advice before his first school dance. That boy would have guarded me. But the man he had become? He was sharpening his knife. 3 days later, unauthorized charges began appearing. A $450 dinner at a French restaurant. A weekend getaway at a resort on the coast. Designer clothes and luxury cosmetics. Each line item was another blade in my heart, but it was also proof. Proof they weren't waiting for me to weaken. They were already feeding off me. Rodriguez's team collected the statements, stamping them as evidence. Patricia, ever practical, filed copies in her office safe. But at night, when I sat alone in the house Frank and I had built, I let myself cry. Not because of the money, but because of the betrayal. My son wasn't just trying to take my future. He was already stealing my present. I wiped my tears and stood before Frank's photo on the mantel. They think I'm finished, I whispered. But I'm not. I'm just getting started. The bank statements were damning enough, but I wanted more. My son and his wife were thieves. Yes, but I knew in my gut this went further. They weren't operating in isolation. They were part of something bigger, and if I was going to expose them, I needed to drag every last piece of rot into the light. I started with Tori's social media. She lived her life online, unable to resist showing off her indulgences. Every purse, every glass of imported wine, every spa treatment, it was all there, time-stamped and public. I scrolled through her photos one evening, my hands trembling as I saved each one. A weekend at the coast. A new bracelet. A caption that read, "When you marry well, you live well." I stared at that line for a long time, my stomach twisting. Marry well? No, Tori. You married into a family and turned it into a feeding trough. The screenshots piled up, piece by piece forming a picture of reckless spending. Still, I knew words on a screen weren't enough. People like Bobby and Tori always had excuses. Oh, we used our own money, or that was a gift. No, I needed something indisputable. So I decided to follow them. With Patricia's help, I purchased an old Honda Civic under her firm's name. Plain, forgettable, and quiet. Perfect for slipping through the city unnoticed. I told myself I was being ridiculous, but when I slid behind the wheel, a strange energy coursed through me. I had spent decades monitoring restless students sneaking cigarettes behind gymnasiums. Surely, I could keep up with my son. One Thursday evening, Bobby and Tori dressed to the nines. He wore a tailored suit I had never seen before, and she clutched a handbag that probably cost more than my monthly pension check. They left in his car, unaware that the old Civic crept several cars behind them. Downtown Portland glittered with nightlife. I parked across the street when they entered a posh restaurant. My heart hammered, but I steadied my hands around the camera I'd borrowed from my neighbor. Through the lens, I watched them laugh and toast with champagne. Soon after, a familiar face joined them, Dr. Hartwell. I adjusted the focus, capturing the moment he embraced them warmly, as though they were co-conspirators rather than physician and family. My stomach churned. But the night wasn't over. 2 more individuals joined the table. One was a woman in her 50s with a severe hairstyle, the other a man whose watch alone probably cost a fortune. I didn't know their names, but I didn't need to. The sight of documents spread across their table was enough. They weren't talking about vacations or family matters, they were planning. After dinner, the group moved to a nearby office building, lights still burning despite the late hour. From across the street, through wide glass panes, I saw folders spread across the table. My camera clicked steadily. I leaned closer, squinting. Each folder had labels, names, addresses, financial summaries. Not just mine. Dozens of them. Elderly homeowners, widows, retirees. They weren't just circling me. They were circling an entire community of vulnerable people. My hands shook as I snapped photo after photo. The faces of my friends from church, neighbors I'd waved to for years. Were their names inside those files too? That night, sleep didn't come. I sat at my dining table, staring at the photographs. Proof of collusion. Proof of greed stretching far beyond my household. The next morning, I placed the photos in front of Rodriguez. She examined each carefully, her jaw tightening. "This is it," she said. "Jessica, you've just cracked open a larger conspiracy. These aren't just opportunistic family members. They're working with medical professionals and financial contacts. It's systemic." Patricia added quietly, "And this means we need to move faster. They'll sense you're resisting, and when they do, they'll push harder." Her warning proved true almost immediately. That evening, Bobby called. "Mom," he began, his voice trying for warmth, "I've been thinking a lot about your memory lapses. Tori, and I really think it's time you get evaluated. Dr. Hartwell's already arranged an appointment with Dr. Patterson. Tomorrow at 2. Tomorrow." They were accelerating their timeline, desperate to box me in. I forced a wavering tone. "Do you really think that's necessary?" "Yes, Mom. You've been calling me at odd hours. You forget where you put your keys. You've been repeating yourself. It's not safe anymore." Every word was a lie. They were fabricating a case, painting me as incompetent. I bit back my anger. "If you think it's for the best, Bobby." His relief was palpable. "It is. Don't worry, we'll be there with you. Everything will be handled." When the call ended, I sat in silence. My son, the boy I had raised, the boy I had loved without condition, was preparing to escort me to my own erasure. I needed clarity, so I walked into the garden Frank had tended with his bare hands. The roses were in bloom, their colors rich even in the dim evening light. I sat on the wooden bench he had built and closed my eyes. "Frank," I whispered, "they think they've won. They think I'll sit quietly while they strip me of everything we worked for. But they don't know who they're dealing with. You married a fighter, remember? Tomorrow, they'll learn I'm still that woman." The breeze rustled through the branches, almost like an answer. I stood, squared my shoulders, and went inside. Tomorrow wasn't going to be the day they broke me. Tomorrow would be the day I brought them all down. The morning of the so-called evaluation, I rose before dawn. My hands wrapped around a cup of tea, I stared at the sky as it lightened from indigo to pale gold. I should have been nervous. I should have been trembling at the thought of men and women trying to brand me as incompetent. But instead, I felt steady. Rodriguez's words echoed in my mind. "Today we catch them. Stay calm. Play your role. We'll handle the rest." When Bobby and Tori pulled into my driveway, I was waiting by the door, handbag in hand. Tori's smile was brittle, stretched too tightly across her face. Bobby kissed my cheek, his voice coated in false concern. "Ready, Mom? We'll take care of everything today." "Yes," I said softly. "I'm ready." Inside their car, I folded my hands in my lap, keeping my eyes lowered. Tori chattered about how peaceful Sunset Manor would be, about the gardens and staff, about how I wouldn't have to worry anymore. Every word felt like poison sugar. Bobby stayed quiet, gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. When we arrived at Dr. Patterson's office, I played my part, hesitant steps, nervous glances, fingers fidgeting. They led me inside, where a thin man with sharp features greeted us. His handshake was firm, his smile practiced. "Jessica," he said, "I'm here to evaluate your memory and decision-making. Just routine questions, nothing to worry about." I nodded, pretending to tremble. "All right." He began with simple tests, reciting numbers, repeating phrases, identifying objects. I stumbled deliberately, pausing too long, mixing details. Bobby's lips curved upward at each falter, Tori's eyes glinting with triumph. But then, just as Patterson prepared to note his findings, the door opened. Detective Rodriguez walked in, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. "Dr. Patterson," she said firmly, "this session is over." The room froze. Tori's mouth fell open. Bobby's knuckles whitened on the chair. Rodriguez held up a folder. "We have recordings of collusion between you, Dr. Hartwell, and several associates." We also have evidence of financial exploitation involving Jessica's accounts. Effective immediately, this office is part of a criminal investigation. For a moment, silence pressed down on us all. Then Tori shot to her feet. This is ridiculous. She's clearly losing her mind. Bobby, say something. But Bobby's face had drained of color. He opened his mouth, closed it, then whispered, I don't understand. Yes, you do, I said quietly. For the first time, I lifted my head and met his eyes without shaking. I know about the bank account, the stolen money, the dinners, the resorts, the handbags. I know about the whisper at my party. Slip something in her drink. I heard it all. His jaw slackened. Mom, you don't. Don't lie to me. My voice was steady now, strong. I was your mother. I gave you everything I could. And you were ready to lock me away like I was already dead. Tears stung my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Not yet. Rodriguez gestured to the officers. Take them into custody. The handcuffs clicked, and for the first time, Tori's mask cracked. You'll regret this, Jessica? You'll die alone, and no one will care. Her venom didn't wound me. Instead, it confirmed what I already knew. She had never loved this family, only the money attached to it. As they were escorted out, Bobby looked back once. His eyes searched mine, pleading, perhaps for forgiveness, perhaps for understanding. I turned away. The rest of the day moved in a blur of statements, paperwork, and debriefings. Rodriguez's team raided the office building I had photographed, seizing files on dozens of victims. Hartwell was arrested before sunset, his empire of fraud crumbling. The woman with the severe hairstyle, the man with the luxury watch, they too were brought in. The network unraveled in hours, exposed by the very woman they thought would be their easiest target. That night, I sat at my dining table again. The same spot where I had once wept in despair now felt like a sanctuary. The garden lamp outside glowed faintly, casting light on Frank's roses. The weight should have lifted, but instead, a new ache filled my chest. Justice had been served, but at a cost I would carry forever. I whispered into the silence. Why, Bobby? Why was money worth more than your mother? Tears finally came then. Hot, unrelenting, unstoppable. I wept for the boy he had been, the man he had become, and the future that would never be. Later, Patricia called. Jessica, you saved not only yourself but dozens of others. You exposed something that would have gone on for years. You should be proud. I said softly. But I'm also broken. She paused. Both can be true. When I hung up, I folded my hands and prayed, not just for myself, but for everyone who had ever been betrayed by their own blood. For mothers discarded, fathers forgotten, grandparents stolen from. I prayed for strength, for them, for me, for anyone watching my story tonight. My dear listeners, you've walked with me through this storm. Tell me, in your heart, do you believe justice always brings closure? Or are there wounds that even the strongest verdicts can never heal? Share your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your voices, because none of us should feel alone in these battles. As for me, I'll keep living. I'll tend to Frank's garden. I'll keep my mind sharp with books and conversation. And I'll treasure every sunrise I'm given, because I fought for it, and I survived. When I look back on everything that happened, the whisper at my retirement party, the poisoned smile of my daughter-in-law, the cold calculation in my son's eyes, I still feel a sting deep inside me. Betrayal doesn't fade quickly. It lingers, creeping into quiet moments like an unwelcome guest. But I also see something else when I look back. I see the strength I didn't know I still carried. I see a woman who refused to be erased, who refused to let others decide when her story was over. People often ask if justice heals. My answer is complicated. Justice brings protection. It brings accountability. It shines light into dark corners. But healing? That comes slower. Healing means facing the truth that someone you love chose greed over loyalty, lies over honesty, selfishness over family. Healing means carrying scars, but refusing to let them define you. I won't lie to you. My nights are still heavy sometimes. I sit in Frank's garden and wonder if Bobby ever truly loved me, or if I was blind all along. I wonder if there was a moment when I could have stopped him from drifting into Tori's grip. These questions have no answers, but they still echo. Yet every morning I rise, tend the roses, sip my tea, and remind myself, I am still here. I survived what was meant to break me. And that, my dear listeners, is victory enough. If you take one lesson from my story, let it be this: never underestimate your own resilience. No matter how old you are, no matter how much others may plot against you, your mind, your courage, and your voice are weapons no one can steal. Thank you for walking with me through this painful journey. Before you go, I ask one thing. If my story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to this channel so more voices like mine can be heard. And tell me in the comments, what does resilience mean to you? Because even in betrayal, even in heartbreak, resilience keeps us alive.